Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wellness Process podcast. I'm not going to lie to you guys, it's been a minute since I've been sitting on this couch recording. I batched a lot of episodes so that this summer I could travel and be out east and sort of be able to not be as tethered to New York City. That said, I said I was going to not be here recording, but I've been here quite a bit. But I did just get back from 2 weeks in Europe. So I am very grateful to have had the time away and to just sort of have a little bit of a recharge. But I'm not going to lie, it feels really good to be back and recording and in studio. And I don't know, I find that I am way more productive and happy when I'm busy. Maybe that says something about how I am when I'm slowed down and maybe I need to learn to get quiet a little bit better. But regardless, it does feel really good to be here and to be working. And I love a solo episode. So let's get into it. A few updates on my end. So like I said, I just got back from Europe. I spent a week in Lake Garda. Clayton and I had a wedding. Two of his friends were getting married there, and my very favorite hotel in the world, it's called Villa Filtrinelli, is actually in Lake Garda, and I've only been one time before, but I told Clay, I was like, if we're gonna be in Lake Garda for this wedding, we have to at least hit Filtrinelli for a couple of nights. So we did that. It was spectacular. It's like a 20-room hotel with 80 staff, so you're getting so much care. The staff are amazing, the service is amazing, and you're like in this very old, beautiful villa on the lake. And I personally think, hot take, that Lake Garda is superior to Lake Como. I think Lake Como is very popular and touristy, and I personally haven't been super impressed by the hotels I've stayed at there. So anyway, Lake Garda is a gem and something to be explored if you have not been. So we did that. We went to the wedding across the lake. That was wonderful. I love celebrating love. And then Clayton and I went to Ibiza for a week. So it's funny because if you've been listening for a while, you know that I spent most of last summer in Ibiza. I was single. I had met Clayton, but we were just getting to know each other and talking every day and like really in the process of falling in love. Like, when I tell you that he was all I could think about the entire time I was in Ibiza last summer, I'm not being dramatic. So I had this really wonderful summer last summer with my girlfriends and, just literally on the phone with Clayton for like 5 hours a day. So it was a totally different experience. And it was also very surreal to come back there engaged to this man that I was, newly meeting and head over heels with last summer. So it was just a really cool kind of reflection moment. I also feel like my experience of Ibiza this time was very different. And there were a few factors at play for that. One is that we were staying at the Six Senses, which if you've been to Ibiza, Six Senses is an amazing hotel. In my opinion, I think it's like the nicest one there, but it is very far from everything. So you're on like the northern side of the island and everything is sort of like a 45-minute to an hour drive from there. So it was really hot and we were driving a lot, and it just had a little bit of a different feel than last time I was there. Last time I was with girlfriends and we were living in a house and we were cooking in, and it was just like when Clayton was asking me where we should go for dinner, like thinking I would know all these spots because I spent like a month there, and I didn't really know because we were at the house so much and we were getting Thai takeout and we weren't really like going out or eating out. It's kind of hard to explain. Like it was a very wellnessy situation in a house, and it was very like familial, if that makes sense. So I had an incredible time. I was super excited to show Clayton all of my spots. I would go to this place called Wild Beats pretty much every morning with my girlfriends and get matcha and acai, and so I was so excited to take him there because we had FaceTimed like a million times last summer from that exact spot. So it was just all the little places where I sort of had these over the phone memories with him, and also had really amazing times with my friends. So we did that. Another highlight of the Ibiza trip was going on a sunset hike. Now, I just first have to admit that, and I feel like most people listening are probably going to have the opposite opinion on this, but I really hate hikes. And I particularly don't like LA, quote, hiking, because I really struggle with the idea of driving in your car to a destination in order to go on a walk. And like, maybe I just haven't done the right hikes in LA, but I find the word hike to be a little bit of a fraud there because I feel like these are just walks, they're not hikes. So why are we driving to take a walk when I could just have taken the walk and been done with it before I even got done with the car ride? And maybe that is like the overly efficient New Yorker in me who walks everywhere to get things done in the city. Like I do it with purpose. And maybe I need to switch my lens to make that a little bit more of a leisure, nervous system regulation, enjoyment thing. So it might be a me problem, but that's how I've felt about hikes historically. And Clayton is way more of an adventure guy when it comes to vacation. So he wants to be exploring. When we were in St. Bart's, he wanted to go on a hike. And I'm like, bro, it's 100 degrees and I'm laying on the beach like, with my matcha. What are we talking about? So we kind of have been finding this meet in the middle area of a sprinkle of adventure and also spending a decent amount of time like laying on the beach or poolside, which is really my preference. So anyway, I set up this hike for Clayton and I, and one of my girlfriends had recommended it, and it was such a highlight. First of all, it was really physically challenging, and I think that I enjoyed because I was shocked by how out of breath and scared at some points I was because it was really steep, and it was just really interesting, to kind of be moving your body and challenging it in that way. And secondly, it was some of the most stunning scenery I've ever seen. We were on top of these mountains. There was a sunset. It was honestly really high elevation and just really beautiful. And it also made me think, sort of in reflecting on it, and I actually wrote about this in my Substack, which will probably come out before this episode. So if you guys want further deep dives on any of the above, I talk about a lot of these personal details in my Substack. If you prefer the writing format, it's pretty fun, and photos and visuals and links and all the things. But I used to kind of be triggered by the idea of hiking or going on a walk, and I think it's because I didn't like the silence. I didn't like being with my thoughts in that way. And when you're working out, you're a little bit less with your thoughts because you're focused on the actual movements that you're doing. But with hiking or walking, I almost viewed it in the category of meditation. And I know this is kind of like a weird way for my brain to have been thinking about it, but I'm just being totally honest. And so I think that was part of why I didn't like hiking. Now, I have done pretty intensive work on my nervous system over the last year. I'm almost at day 200 of doing journal speak every day and meditating every day. I've switched up my meditation method, so I'm doing Joe Dispenza on YouTube now. I pay for the ad-free version, so you're not getting blasted with ads during it, which is very important. But I've heard you can also find his stuff on Spotify. Anyway, I digress. So I think with all of this nervous system regulation work, it's made it so that in scenarios like a hike, which I haven't done in a very long time up until this one in Ibiza, I'm actually present and enjoying, and I'm finally experiencing the therapeutic side of nature that so many people talk about that I've never understood. So that may sound insane to some of you because I find that most people love nature and most people find the therapeutic benefits of nature. I'm here to say that that's something I struggled with before because my mind didn't like the quiet. It didn't like the introspection. It didn't like the stillness. And now it's finding more comfort in those areas. So that was just a really A, interesting experience, and B, small win from like a mental health and nervous system regulation perspective that I wanted to share. So all in all, we had a beautiful time. It was definitely a different experience than the last time I was there. And I'm kind of like, I don't need to go back for a while. I don't know. I feel like Ibiza sort of served this wonderful, expansive purpose for me. And I loved getting to show it to Clayton, but I think I'm good for a little while. And it also just strengthened my love for Italy. And I feel like every time I go there, I leave even more obsessed. The food, the people, the water, the culture, the hotels, the service, the hospitality, all of it was just incredible. So next summer, you can catch me at Lake Garda 100%. Ibiza, I'm not so sure about. I also want to mention that outside of just this hiking experience and sort of being able to feel this difference in my nervous system that I never thought I would be able to experience, I felt really good physically. And that has not historically been the case for me on vacation. Even thinking back a couple months ago to like Australia, I struggled with some things, and I really struggled with being out of my routine And I struggled with being that far away from home and the time difference and eating out all the time. And I was kind of, I'm human and I go through these waves of sort of being mean to my body or, just not feeling my best and sort of beating myself up unnecessarily. And I just have to say that this trip to Europe, I really didn't feel any of that. And I think a big part of it was sticking to these routines. I also moved my body a lot. And it was not out of a feeling of wanting to shrink myself or punish myself for the way that I had eaten or because I felt like I needed to check that box. It came from this different inner self-love, self-respect, and urge to feel my best. Because there is a momentum that gets created when you are meditating, when you're eating whole, beautiful, amazing, vibrant foods, when you're moving your body, that at least for me, someone who is highly sensitive and who requires a lot of these things in order to have a solid baseline. And I know that's not everyone, but I know that I have a lot of sensitive girlies listening who will get that. These non-negotiable rituals and routines that you personally have found, and they will probably look different to some degree for everyone. But if you can just pick 3 or 4 things that you stick to regardless of your surroundings and circumstances and emotions, I'm telling you, the consistency of that is the difference between being good and being great. And I felt on this trip, despite even kind of going through some things in my personal life and just feeling some ups and downs with different relationships in my life, I felt amazing physically and emotionally. I felt confident. I felt empowered. I felt inspired. I wanted to be working. Like I really felt amazing. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because that is not how I usually feel on vacation. Kind of going back to that stillness thing. Sometimes vacation can bring up a lot more scrolling. And when there's more downtime, maybe we don't use it in the best ways. And I really stuck to my practices on this trip. And it wasn't because I was forcing myself to. It was because I genuinely wanted to. And I think that that is why. And I think that this really applies to working out and consistency with that or, really any of these practices. But when your goal with working out is weight loss, that's all you have to anchor yourself to. You're not anchoring yourself to the way that you feel after you work out. It's an entirely different purpose. And this is all way easier said than done. I completely recognize that. And it's taken me 20 years to get here. So don't beat yourself up if you're not there, and know that it's also not linear and I have my ups and downs. But I'm just speaking to this one trip and sort of a difference that I definitely noticed in myself. The reason behind your routines really matters because it takes it from being a punishment or being something you have to do to being something that you are nourishing and nurturing yourself with. And your body will 100% feel the difference and it will reward you. It will reward you with vibrance, vitality, happiness, excitement, zest for life, all the things that I really genuinely felt on this trip. Okay, so something that, just doing a little pivot here, this is really the meat of the episode, is I recently did this reel. You guys have probably seen the trend that's like, you're talking about something that you're a quote expert on, that you're like giving your audience truths that may hurt their feelings or trigger them. And I did one on wellness truths that may hurt your feelings. And I got so much feedback on this of people wanting me to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive because it was just, I was giving like brief explanations in the caption and people wanted more information. So I wanted to kind of go through some of those things and, my logic and explanation and routines and thoughts behind each of them, because I think that some of them are unpopular, some of them may be a little triggering or harsh, and I feel like this is totally a safe space for that. So the first one, and this is something I talk about a lot, but I will never shut up about it because it is literally the reason why I'm sitting here and it's completely changed my life. I truly believe that your chronic whack-a-mole conditions, acne, IBS, migraines, vertigo, pelvic pain, that was my symptom for 5 years, Lyme symptoms, all of that, these things that you have ruled out, real structural issues. And I'm not saying that these things aren't real. The pain, the conditions, it is all very real. but I genuinely believe that there is an emotional root to it. And this is all based off of Nicole Sachs' work, who is absolutely incredible. She is following Dr. John Sarno, who was her doctor. And I talk about this at length on a lot of episodes, so I won't go into so much detail on that. If you want more, I have several episodes with her, and it will change your life. Learning this from me, this little tidbit that I'm sharing, is a great starting place. Go deeper with Nicole, read her book, listen to my podcast episodes with her, and dive in if it resonates. But I think that so many people fall into the victim mindset when they have these conditions. And especially when you're so used to kind of lily padding from one condition to the other. That's where the whack-a-mole comes in. So for me, it was, I had like chronic strep throat for so many years. And then I got chronic diverticulitis for so many years. And then I had chronic skin issues for so many years. And then during COVID, I started getting chronic pelvic pain for so many years. And that's how it works. It moves from one place to another because your body would rather feel physical chronic pain than it would the emotions that are underlying. And that's exactly what I experienced. And that's exactly the work that changed my life. And I think that, by the way, probably very unpopular opinion, Lyme disease is a huge one. It is such a big one. And by the way, I also tested positive for all of these things because as I was trying to figure my own situation and condition out, and I would have literally died trying. That's how sick I felt. I tested positive for so much Lyme and co-infections. I had really high levels of mold. I had positive tests for parasites. I had all of these things. And that's not to say that they're not real and they're not there. They absolutely are. But what I believe and what Nicole always says, and I'm totally repurposing her work when I say this, is that we have a reservoir. And there's only so much room in that reservoir. Let's put in the Lyme. Let's put in the mold. Let's put in, all of those things that are in your system, Epstein-Barr. The emotional piece is huge and it's very important. So when that piece starts to overflow because you haven't been expressing your emotions, or you're a perfectionist who beats themselves up all the time, or you're super sensitive and so you feel everything really deeply, or you chronically have felt like you're not good enough, it starts to overflow and you start to get symptoms from all of those underlying things. So for me, it was Lyme. I had memory loss, joint swelling, I gained weight. I felt horrible. I felt flu-like all the time. And I think that, and I don't necessarily believe that any doctor is taking advantage in this situation. I think that people genuinely just don't know. And so I think that a lot of Lyme disease treatments are a scam. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it because I spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to, quote, cure Lyme disease because the doctors saw that come back positive on a test. That is a meaningful piece of data. It was not causing my pelvic pain. And I see friends and I see so many people paying for these insanely expensive IVs and doing ozone therapy and doing stem cell therapy and flying to other countries and doing all this stuff. And by the way, if my journey had led in that direction, I totally would have done the same because you will do literally anything to solve your own problem and to be your own advocate and to get better. That said, it feels like people are being taken advantage of because of how expensive those treatments are and because of how sick they are and because no one is looking at the nervous system in any of these treatments. They are just trying to kill the Lyme, kill the Lyme, kill the Lyme. And it's like, I remember going to my doctor, and by the way, I don't fault anyone for giving me these treatments. They made sense. But I remember paying hundreds of dollars for an IV and then afterwards having like the worst pelvic flare of my life. And it was literally because I was so convinced that the Lyme was so bad and my nervous system was so out of whack that anytime I did a treatment like that, I got very triggered emotionally and it would cause a massive flare. And unfortunately, that reiterated in my brain the narrative that there was Lyme disease and that's what was wrong with me. And it was the spirochetes in my bladder that were causing the pain. And there were so many different things that people were telling me. And I just wanted it to be something. I just wanted to be something tangible that I could kill off and that I could heal from. And so it made so much sense. But clearly I'm very passionate about this. But that is sort of the long of the short of my point on that. And I bring up the Lyme thing because I've just seen so many friends spend so much money on treatment. And some people get better. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way that their nervous system is regulating in the process and sort of inadvertently regulating your nervous system through doing various treatments. So that is all I will say on that. The next one is that I really believe AirPods are frying our brains. I think that there is nothing good about having a Bluetooth device emitting EMFs inside of your head in your ear. Now, I got feedback on Instagram because people were like, but you wear AirPods Max, which are the big ones that go over your ears. For me, as soon as I realized that AirPods were not good, by the way, the WHO classifies radio frequency EMFs as carcinogenic to humans, group 2B, possibly carcinogenic to humans. Now, we know what that means. The point is, EMFs are not good. You can do your own research on it. I am not a scientist. However, I have read enough and seen enough to know that we don't want EMFs inside of our head. So my first step in realizing this, and by the way, this is not an easy change to make, to move from having wireless freedom with headphones every single day to being, back in time with a cord. I totally recognize that. And that is why when I learned this and I had existing AirPods, and then I had AirPods Max that go over the ear. My first step was, okay, I'm going to get rid of the AirPods. I actually threw them away. Got rid of those, stopped using them entirely. Now, weaning myself off of the AirPods Max, which I can only assume are maybe a fraction better than the AirPods because they don't go physically inside of your ear, but it's still EMFs on your head. It's still Bluetooth attached to your head. It cannot be good. I use those only when I am doing workouts in a group of people where I'm at a gym and I can't have loud sound and music, or if I'm meditating in my bedroom or somewhere if I'm at a hotel and Clayton is sleeping. Those are the only times that I'm now using my AirPods Max. So it went from 100% of the time to probably 5 to 10, and I feel really good about that. And as with any of these changes, it doesn't need to be 100% black and white, and you also don't need to set yourself up for something that's not attainable when it comes to consistency. Because when you do that, it's like saying, oh, I never work out, and so now I'm going to go 0 to 100 and work out 7 days a week. That's not how you create a long-standing habit. And so I'm viewing this the same way. I got rid of the AirPods. I'm using the AirPods Max minimally. And to be honest, I feel a little weird after I wear them. I don't know about you guys, but when I would wear them on long flights before, which I'm not even packing them in my carry-on now so that I will use the corded one because there's no reason why I can't be using a cord on a flight. I would land and I would almost feel a little bit dizzy. I don't know, maybe this was me in my head or a placebo situation, but I don't think they're good. I think it's a small change we can make to get rid of them and just move back to the wired one. And by the way, the wired one is actually pretty amazing when you're having phone calls or when I'm recording stories, to use the little piece by your mouth. The microphone is so crystal clear. So there are pros to it as well. Okay, my third one is that I really believe when you are eating, following a specific diet, whether that is vegan, whether that is carnivore, whether that is paleo, I think it's just a means of control. And I say this with love because I've done it. I've done a million different elimination diets and things like that. And I mean, I even ate medical medium style where I was literally only eating fruits and vegetables for a period of time because I was so trying to heal myself. But there is something about eating within one of these quote diets where you feel extra safe because you're eating within the bounds of this diet. There's something about being oh, but I don't eat dairy or gluten, that makes you feel sort of safe and in control. And I'm not saying that that's a weight loss thing for everyone. It certainly can become that. But people love the freedom of, oh, I get to eat unlimited steak and butter in this diet. There's something about that. And I saw actually recently, I'm sure you guys have seen this, people talking about how matcha is causing hair loss. Now, from my understanding, any kind of caffeine doesn't allow you to absorb iron in the same way, which can then make you lose your hair. Now, this could happen with coffee. It could happen with tea. Matcha happens to be the target of it right now because that's very popular. But the point is that because matcha is, quote, healthy and it has antioxidants and it's a better form of caffeine, people go so ham on it that they start losing their hair. That falls into my exact description that I'm talking about right now, where it's oh, well, if that food is a good food, then it's a free-for-all. Why can't we just accept the fact that eating a whole food diet as much as we can, let's call it 80-20, to nourish our body with vibrant foods, with variety, which a lot of these diets do not necessarily condone, and with seasonal eating, Why can't we accept that that is generally, and I'm making broad generalizations here and speaking just from my own personal experience, an ideal way for people to be eating? I think that the diets are out. I think carnivore is out. I've never been a believer in any of that. I don't believe in intermittent fasting. Like, I think we should just eat intuitively when we're hungry and eat the things that feel good, and also allow room to be in Italy eating pasta and drinking wine a little bit within reason and enjoying bread, because joy and presence is equally as important as eating clean is. So it's really about striking that balance. And again, I realize that this is not super easy for everyone. It's also, if you have ever had issues with food or body image, I completely empathize, and I know that this doesn't come so simply, but know that you should just take a little bit of a closer look if you are eating within one of these diets and see where it's actually coming from. That is the question that I will leave you guys with on that one. Okay, so I just mentioned wine in my last one. I'm going to kind of counter that and say that alcohol is poison. I think most of us know that. I think it's bullshit when people say, oh, red wine is actually good for your brain. No, it's not. It's literally not good at all. And by the way, I'm not sober. I drink occasionally. I am going to Chez Margot with my girlfriends tonight for an early birthday celebration, and I'm absolutely going to have a spicy skinny margarita. But I never have more than one drink in a sitting. And I probably go out and have a drink once a week or maybe once every other week. Like, it is not frequent to me. When I was in Ibiza, I didn't have a sip of alcohol the entire time. I think that when we try to frame alcohol as anything other than poison, it's BS. And what I will say on this, as someone who does occasionally drink, is that reducing or entirely getting rid of your alcohol intake will 100% better your health and wellness, your vibrance, your efficiency, your vitality, and all the things. Like, that is just the plain truth of it. This is one that I feel like people are not going to like, and I got a lot of heat for on social media, but I'm just going to say it. Trader Joe's is a rebranded processed food store, and I have felt this way for a very long time. I have not been in a Trader Joe's in a very long time, and I'm glad that people are finally shining a little bit of light on it. And it's unfortunate how triggered people tend to be about this because it's not what they want to hear. And I am also I am speaking separate from their organic produce, their non-packaged goods, things that have whole food organic ingredients. Absolutely. I honor their lower price point. I think it's incredible. And I am not talking to the people that are only buying those things. I'm talking to the people that are buying these processed foods that have cute branding and good names, that are full of seed oils, added sugar, preservatives, ultra processed ingredients, with this like sort of natural branding. That doesn't sit well with me, and I'm really glad that people are starting to sort of become aware of this situation and talk about it more, because I'm all about indulging, but what I'm not about is eating or doing something that you think is good for you that actually isn't. Like, I don't want people to be bamboozled. If you know what you're signing up for, great. I'm still not a huge fan of eating that way when you're cooking at home. It's one thing to enjoy a beautiful meal out at a restaurant, and like, yes, there's probably some seed oils in it, and maybe you have a glass of wine, but to be doing that at home when you're going to the effort to go grocery shopping and cook your own meals, it just feels a little counterintuitive. Now, this is something that I mentioned when I was talking about Ibiza, but it's really kind of been my motto recently. So I'm going to add it into this list, which is consistency is what separates good from great. And I think this is really important as it pertains to literally any health and wellness habit, because there was so long, I'm going to just give myself as an example. I spent the last probably 7 years knowing that I needed to meditate. And I would, hop in and out of different methods, and I would maybe do like 1 or 2 meditations a week. And I would always feel a little shitty about it because I knew I could do better. And there was really absolutely no reason that I couldn't just wake up 20 minutes earlier and get that done every day. There's really no reason. I have no kids. I work from home. I have a very flexible schedule. And yet I was able to convince myself for 7 years that I didn't have the time or interest, or it wasn't important enough to me to meditate. I am now, as I said, almost on day 200 of not missing a single day when it comes to meditation. And I highly recommend with any of these habits that you create a streak for yourself. Because once you're 100 days into that streak, I don't know about you, but my ego alone does not want to lose. Like, I am locked in on this meditation thing. If I'm sick, I'm still meditating. I just do it from bed. Like, whatever it takes to get it done, to continue my streak and to continue that self-respect level of showing up for myself every day. So consistency has made me great at meditating. And you can sit there and say, I'm not a good meditator. My mind wanders a lot. So does mine. And so did mine. And it still does a little bit, but it is a completely different experience because I've been consistent. And I went from being, honestly, not even good, bad at meditating to being great. And being great doesn't mean I'm sitting there going to another planet every day and seeing colors. Like, I really am just a little bit more in control of my brain and my thoughts. And that bleeds into my day-to-day, interactions with people and the way that I respond to things and the way that I'm able to regulate my emotions if something comes up. And it's been really incredible to feel. And I think that really my gateway into this, and kind of going back to the first wellness truth that I spoke about with chronic conditions, journal speak was really my gateway into this. And that was the practice created by Nicole Sachs, where you do a 20-minute daily journal dump. So you're basically aggressively unleashing everything that's happened that day or in the past or whatever is coming up for you. And you're saying things that you would literally want nobody to ever hear. And then you have the option to rip it up afterwards. I actually don't. I keep mine in my journal, and I don't know why that is, but I have like 6 journals that are filling my nightstand right now that I probably need to get rid of. But anyway, the consistency of that, because I knew that if I wanted to heal my pelvic pain, that needed to happen every single day. So when I did it every single day, the pelvic pain went away and I saw myself going from meh to great. So then I was like, okay, where else can I apply this in my life? So I started doing it with the meditations. And now I'm on almost day 200 of that, and I feel great. Like I said, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling abundant. I'm feeling like a creative surge of energy that I am actually pouring into something really exciting right now, which I'll tell you guys more about later when I can. But I am feeling the difference from that. And once you start to get over that hump, which is literally just yourself, you're just in your own way and you have to get over that physical hump of you. Once you get over that and you start feeling the momentum of feeling good, there is nothing that will stop me from continuing it. So consistency. It also applies to the way that I eat, which has now bled into just me genuinely wanting to feed my body amazing, nourishing, clean foods. And like I said, there's room for fun. There is room for going way off of that. There's room for pizza and enjoyment and all the things. But at the end of the day, I really feel good when I'm nourishing my body, so I come right back to it. Consistency. The last one I have for you guys is that you manifest from your subconscious and not from your thoughts. So, you can sit there and say positive things and think positive things, and there's absolutely no harm in that. But really, where I believe, and Lacey Phillips' work, who To Be Magnetic, which I just did a podcast with Jessica Gill from her team, which you guys should absolutely listen to if you're interested in manifesting. They are the #1 neural manifestation program existing. And it's where I've learned all of my manifestation techniques that have absolutely worked. And I physically would not be sitting here in front of this camera or this microphone doing this podcast if it were not for their program. But basically, the way that this works is very simple. If you have limiting beliefs about yourself, your life, love, relationships, money, all the things, those limiting beliefs will literally be reflected in your reality. So if you believe that you're not worthy of love, if you believe you can't be successful and start your own business, that's what your reality will look like. And what this requires is, and I think Lacey Phillips' work does an amazing job of it. I've also been really noticing it in Joe Dispenza's meditations that I've been doing in the morning. It's about genuinely believing those things. It is about genuinely acting like the person that you want to be in the future. It is about going in and rewiring those limiting beliefs. And there really is a way to do that. Lacey Phillips does these things called deep imaginings, where, it's like a self-hypnosis where you're kind of rewiring those neurons. Neuroplasticity is a thing for a reason. There is a way to shift those patterns and beliefs. And I think my life is a really good example of that. And I'm not anywhere near where I want to be. Like, we are just at the beginning of this journey, I promise you. And it is because I believe that the things that I want to achieve in life, and even just the way that I want to be, the future vision of myself, I believe it's already a reality. And I think that that is one of the most important things when it comes to manifesting, is genuinely believing in you. Okay, in winding down, I am turning 33 tomorrow. So I didn't really have anything planned to say on this, but I just wanted to quickly speak to how much can happen in a year. So I'm turning 33 tomorrow on July 31st, which I know is probably a few weeks before this podcast is going to come out. Like I said, I'm batching for the summer. But for anybody that is feeling stuck or heartbroken, or like they haven't quite figured their career out, or any of those things, there's so many areas of our life that we want to be in alignment. And if you're feeling like any of those areas are not in alignment for you, know that last year I was going through a breakup. I was moving into an apartment by myself. I was like, okay, I am 31 and single, and I am really going out on my own. Sorry, not last year, but the year before that, if that makes sense. All my years are jumbling. Anyway, 2023. So not that long ago. I mean, even last year I wasn't engaged. I was just meeting Clayton. So yeah, think about a year ago and how much can happen. And I genuinely believe the point earlier that I was talking about with manifesting from your subconscious, that is 100% the reason why I am sitting where I'm sitting right now, having found the love of my life, with a ring on my finger, with a wedding coming up in a few months. And so much can happen in a year. So never underestimate that. Also, being in your 30s is a beautiful thing, and being single in your 30s is also a beautiful thing. Your discernment is higher, your capacity for bullshit is lower, and it is truly a gift to be meeting someone later in life, to be starting your dream career later in life. You just have a different level of confidence to you and of knowing, and your gut is so strengthened. So for anyone that is, maybe where I was a year ago, or just in any kind of transition phase, please keep that in mind. And, it's just sort of this reflection that I had as I go into my 33rd year, and I have such a different view on being 33 than I did when I was 29 turning 30, and I was panicked about being 30 and not being with the right person, and, just sort of going into that spiral of my biological clock and finding the one, and sort of this narrative about no one is for me, and maybe I will be alone. And, you go down all these different routes out of self-protection. And anyway, if you're stuck there, start doing manifestation work. Start with the consistency, waking up 20 minutes earlier, doing the meditation. I promise you it will pay off. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you next time.